From the bottom of the league to a playoff sleeper, the Panthers' 2025 turnaround might be the NFL's most surprising story. Since Cam Newton's prime, the Panthers have wanted the NFL wilderness, but now there's a real plan and real talent. In year 2 under GM Dan Morgan and the head coach Dave Canales, they might finally be turning a corner. With some smart offseason moves, this team looks poised for a turnaround. So let's look at the biggest upgrades fueling this playoff push and the one thing that could still blow it all up. Let's start with the Panthers' biggest problem heading into this offseason: their defense. It wasn't just bad, it was arguably the worst in the entire league. Dead last in total defense, points allowed, and rush defense. A full-on collapse. A huge reason for that? They lost major playmakers like Brian Burns and Frankie Louvu and didn't come close to replacing them. Things got so rough that even Ejiro Evero, one of the league's brightest defensive minds, was rumored to be on his way out. But this offseason, the Panthers actually made some smart moves that could help Evero return this unit to a top 10 form. Here's why the defense might finally turn the corner. As I said, losing star talent hurt, but what really broke this defense was depth, especially up front. Guys who should have been rotational players or backups were suddenly starting. And when that happens in a complex scheme like Evero's, which relies on disguised pressures and post-snap coverage shifts, you're gonna get miscommunications, busted plays, and blown coverages. That's why the additions of Tershawn Wharton and Bobby Brown III are so important. Even with Derek Brown healthy, these guys raise the floor. You're not one injury away from disaster anymore. Now you've got reliable bodies who can hold the line. And Carolina didn't stop there. They drafted 2 promising edge rushers, Nick Scorton and Princely McMillan, who could both see meaningful snaps early, especially in rotational roles. Scorton actually in particular looks ready to contribute right away. He's stout against the run and offers more long-term upside than Jadeveon Clowney ever did in that kind of role. But here's the thing, in Evero's system, it's not just the front that matters, it's the back end that actually drives everything. That's why the signing of Tre'von Moehrig might be the most underrated move of Carolina's offseason. Last year, Xavier McKinley became an all-pro under Jeff Hafley, not just because he played well, but because Hafley used him brilliantly. He lined him up everywhere, at the line, in slot, deep middle, and rotated him post-snap to disguise coverages so well that quarterbacks looked lost. When a safety who looks like he's blitzing suddenly drops into a deep zone post-snap, that's how you get bad reads, tip balls, and easy picks. It also messes with offensive line protections because now there's another possible rusher they have to account for. And I believe Evero could use Moehrig exactly the same way. This isn't just about preventing points, it's about generating turnovers and creating pressure by only sending 4. The Panthers made real strides on defense this offseason, so now the pressure shifts to an inconsistent offense. If this team's going to make a playoff push, it comes down to whether the offense can finally find stability. Last year, the offense was consistently inconsistent, and much of that came down to personnel. Dave Canales simply didn't have the right players to run his system. There was no go-to receiver to build the passing game around, and outside of Chuba Hubbard, the run game offered next to nothing. For Canales' offense to function, it needs 2 things: a reliable ground game and at least one dynamic playmaker who can draw attention from defenses. But this offseason, Carolina went out and got both. Between the draft and free agency, they added the kind of explosive talent that could finally unlock this offense's full potential. Here's how. In the backfield, signing Rico Dowdle gives Carolina a second proven 1,000-yard back. And that's key. For Canales, everything starts with the ground game that keeps defenses honest. Drafting Trevor Etienne only strengthens that identity. Etienne adds speed and home run ability, but pairing him with Dowdle gives Canales the tough yardage balance that opens up the entire playbook. Still, pounding the rock only gets you so far, and Carolina knew they had to upgrade their air game too. The Panthers made the biggest splash by drafting Tetairoa McMillan, a true wide receiver 1. He finally fills the DJ Moore-sized void that's existed since Carolina moved up for Bryce Young. T-Mac is the kind of dominant receiver Canales loves to build around, just like Mike Evans in Tampa. His presence should make things easier for everyone else, especially Adam Thielen, who now gets to shift back into the slot where he's most dangerous. Carolina didn't stop there though. They also added a late-round steal in Jimmy Horn Jr., a burner with real juice after the catch. The only question is where he fits. The slot is crowded with Thielen, Hunter Renfrow, and Jalen Coker, but early camp reps show Horn lining up on the outside. That might be where he's most effective. In Canales' West Coast style offense, Bryce Young needs to get the ball out fast, usually within 2.7 seconds. Horn's burst and sharp route running make him ideal for quick-hitting plays, especially if he's stacked behind McMillan. And once the ball is in his hands, he's electric in space. Carolina now has their deepest backfield since the Stewart-Williams duo powered them to playoff runs in the early 2010s, and a revamped receiver room that finally has firepower. So the only thing that can make or break this team's playoff chances this year is Bryce Young. Since being drafted number 1 overall, Bryce Young has done little to justify the Panthers' decision to trade up and take him over CJ Stroud. Last season, he was even benched in favor of Andy Dalton and had to fight his way back into the starting lineup. To be fair, the situation around him has been pretty brutal. In his first 2 years, Young's dealt with multiple head coaches, front office turnover, and a supporting cast that was headlined by an aging Adam Thielen. Until this offseason, Carolina gave him almost nothing to work with. But I believe things are finally changing, and so with Bryce. After returning from the bench, he showed real growth down the stretch. 3 straight games with multiple touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and a passer rating north of 100. He looked calm, decisive, and confident. Now he enters year 2 in Dave Canales' offense, a system tailor-made for his strengths, with a retooled supporting cast and more stable offensive line. This is the best situation he's had as a pro. If Young takes the lead, Carolina could be back in the playoff picture. But until we see it consistently on Sundays, he remains the biggest question mark on this roster. So, are the Panthers really about to shock the NFL? After years in the league's basement, Carolina finally has the ingredients for a turnaround: a reloaded defense with real depth, an offense packed with speed and potential, and a coaching staff that actually seems to know what it's doing. But for all the moves they made, it still comes down to one thing: Bryce Young. If he builds on last year's late season growth, this team can make noise. If not, the Panthers risk wasting one of the most quietly impressive off seasons in the league. Either way, don't sleep on Carolina, because if things click, even just a little bit, they won't be picking the top 5 again anytime soon. But I'm curious to hear what you think. Are you convinced the Panthers could be a playoff team, or am I overhyping them? Tell me your thoughts down in the comments. If you like this video, then you're going to love this one right here, where we break down how the Panthers should be using Xavier Legette. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Emmett Sword from the RFL Show, and we'll see you in the next video.